Okay, this is the research title that I found, the effect of digital game intervention on measuring emotion, interest, and comprehension of basic programming concept among community college students. And in the research, it is clearly stated the usage of Gagne 9 event. There are 7 times they use it in the instructional design of the game. And this is the game interface, right, in the attachment section. Then I use Notebook LM to explain the findings.
Welcome to The Explainer. You know, we're always digging into interesting studies here, and today we've got a great one. It tackles a pretty big question in education. Can playing a video game really make you a better programmer?
Now, it might sound like a simple question, right? But the answer, well, it could have some massive implications. I mean, let's be real. Learning to code can be tough, especially when you're just starting out. It's a huge hurdle for a lot of people. So that's why a team of researchers put together this really cool experiment to see if a game could be the secret ingredient, the key to cracking that problem.
All right, so first things first, let's really set the stage here and talk about the problem itself. Why is learning the basics of programming so darn hard for so many people?
Well, it usually boils down to a few key things. The subject can just feel super abstract, kind of dry, and let's be honest, sometimes just plain boring. And what happens then? Well, when students can't really connect with what they're learning, their focus just plummets, their motivation completely vanishes, and the whole learning process just grinds to a halt.
Okay, so faced with this challenge, the researchers decided to design an experiment. Their big idea was to see if they could find a new approach, something that could totally shake things up and change how students felt about learning to code.
And what was their solution? It was a custom-built digital game called Mathka 1. Now, this wasn't just some off-the-shelf game, not at all. It was built from the ground up specifically to teach those core programming concepts, but through things like interactive puzzles and fun challenges.
So how do they measure if this whole thing actually worked? They used a pretty classic, solid 3-step process. First up, a pre-test to get a baseline. What did the students know coming in? Then came the intervention, which is just the fancy word for when they actually used the new teaching methods. And finally, of course, a post-test to see what, if anything, had changed.
So for this study, they brought in 150 community college students. And here's the important part. They randomly split these students into 3 totally separate groups. And as you're about to see, each group was going to have a very different learning experience.
All right, let's break this down, because this table is really the heart of the whole experiment. First, you've got the KV group. Think of them as the control group. They got the old-school, traditional classroom teaching, nothing fancy. Then you have the KG group. They learned programming only by playing the MFK1 game. That's it. And finally, the KVG group got a mix of both worlds. They had the conventional teaching, and they got to use the game.
Okay, so the stage is set. The groups are divided. Now for the million-dollar question. Did the game actually work? I mean, did it do what it was supposed to do? Did it grab the students' attention and, get them more engaged? And the results? Oh, they were crystal clear. The group that just had the conventional teaching, their interest levels barely budged. But the 2 groups that used the MAFK1 game, both of them, the game-only group and the blended group, saw this huge spike in interest and focus. It was a massive difference.
And this really gets to the emotional side of it. The study found that the game literally replaced feelings of boredom with enjoyment. It's not just that students were paying more attention, they were genuinely having a better time doing it. The whole vibe changed. Now, this is a really important point. This didn't just happen because, a game. No, this specific game, Mathka 1, was actually really good. It was rated by both experts and the students themselves as a high-quality, super user-friendly tool. It was well-designed for learning, and that made all the difference.
Okay, but this is where things get really interesting. Because sure, engagement is great, high fives all around. But does feeling engaged actually lead to, better learning? Does it translate to higher test scores?
And that right there became the central question of the whole study. I mean, the goal isn't just to make learning fun for the sake of it, right? The real goal is to help people understand really complex stuff. So what was it? What truly drives comprehension? The fun part or the focus part?
So the researchers crunched all the numbers, they analyzed all the data, and a clear winner emerged. One factor stood out above everything else. And surprisingly, it wasn't just enjoyment or fun.
The single biggest thing that predicted higher scores was a student's level of interest. We're talking about that deep, focused curiosity. And here's the twist in the story. Just feeling happy or having fun, that alone did not directly lead to better scores. It turns out, just being entertained isn't the same thing as being intellectually engaged. There's a difference.
So that's the crucial distinction right there. The game worked so well because it did more than just entertain them. It took that fun, that enjoyment, and it converted it into genuine, focused interest. It sparked a curiosity that made students want to figure out the puzzle, to solve the problem, and that desire to learn was the real key to their higher scores.
All right, so let's bring this all together in our final section. What does this discovery mean for the bigger picture? How could it actually change the way we teach, especially for those subjects we all know can be kinda difficult or, boring?
So here are the big takeaways. The real magic of a good educational game isn't just that it's fun, it's that it creates purposeful engagement. It's about grabbing a student's attention, for sure, but then channeling that attention into focused interest, because that's the fuel for real deep learning. And this doesn't just apply to coding. It could work for any complex subject.
And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. If a well-designed game can totally transform how we learn something as tricky as programming, just imagine what other supposedly boring subject could be next in line for a revolution.